The cabin had been built to withstand winters like this, or so Thomas Hale had believed when he chose the spot nearly a decade ago. Thick pine logs, a stone hearth, a roof pitched steep enough to shed snow. Still, on nights when the wind roared down from the mountains and pressed its full weight against the walls, even the strongest shelter felt small. Snow had been falling for 2 days straight, quiet and relentless, filling the valley until the world beyond the windows disappeared. Thomas sat in his worn armchair, a wool blanket over his knees, watching the flames dance in the fireplace. The ticking clock above the door marked time with steady patience. At 72, he had learned to appreciate that sound. It reminded him he was still here. Retirement had brought him to this place. Not the kind of retirement his colleagues talked about. Over farewell dinners and speeches, full of fishing trips and grandchildren, Thomas's had been quieter. His wife, Ellen, had passed the year before he turned 65. The house in town felt too large afterward, every room echoing with memories he couldn't bear to dust. So he sold it, packed what mattered, and drove north until the roads narrowed and the silence felt honest. Out here, the days followed simple rhythms. Chop wood, heat soup, walk when the weather allowed. The radio stayed mostly silent, tuned low for forecasts. People thought solitude was lonely. Thomas knew better. Solitude was a choice. Loneliness crept in. When you believed your purpose had ended, that thought came to him often. On nights like this, the wind rose suddenly, rattling the shutters. Snow hissed against the windows like sand. Thomas stood stiffly and added another log to the fire. He was turning back toward his chair when he heard it, a sound that did not belong to the storm. Scratch. He froze, listening. The wind howled again, drowning everything out. He told himself it was nothing. Branches, drifting ice. He took a step forward. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. His chest tightened. The sound came from the door. No one's out there, he murmured. More habit than belief. The nearest neighbor lived miles away, and no one traveled the mountain road during a blizzard. Still, the scratching came again, weaker this time, followed by a low, breathy sound that tugged at something deep in his memory. Thomas reached for his coat and boots. His movements were slow, but deliberate, the same way they had been on countless nights, when instinct had overridden caution. He hesitated only once, hand on the latch, as if bracing himself for disappointment. When he opened the door, the cold rushed in, sharp and biting. Snow swirled in the porch light. Blinding him for a moment, he squinted, heart pounding, scanning the ground. At first, he saw nothing. Then something shifted near the step. A dark shape struggled against the snow, lifting its head with visible effort. A dog, large once, judging by the frame, but now frighteningly thin. Its fur was clotted with ice, each breath sending a faint cloud into the air. One ear stood upright, the other bent low, frozen in a familiar tilt. Thomas dropped to his knees. "Oh my God," he whispered. The dog tried to rise, failed, and let out a weak whine. Their eyes met, and time seemed to fold in on itself. Those eyes, deep brown, steady even now, had looked at him through smoke and chaos years ago. Unafraid. "No," Thomas said again. The word breaking. It can't be. He brushed snow away with trembling hands, feeling ribs beneath his fingers. When he touched the collar, cracked and stiff with age, his breath caught. The metal tag bore a faded number, barely legible, but he knew it as well as his own badge. "Max," he said softly. The dog's tail twitched once. Thomas didn't think about the cold seeping through his clothes. As he lifted Max into his arms, the dog was lighter than he should have been, a weight that felt wrong. He carried him inside, kicked the door shut, and set him carefully by the fire. For the next hour, the world narrowed to simple tasks. Blankets, warm water, broth heated slowly on the stove. Thomas worked with the same focus he once brought to emergencies, his hands remembering what his body tried to forget. He rubbed warmth into Max's legs, speaking to him in a low, steady voice. "You're safe," he said. "I've got you." As Max drifted into exhausted sleep, memories rose unbidden. Max as he had been, strong, alert, pacing beside him through dark alleys and abandoned buildings. The night of the warehouse fire came back with painful clarity. Smoke thick enough to choke, beams collapsing. Thomas pinned beneath debris. He remembered calling out, voice hoarse, and then the weight of Max against him, teeth gripping his sleeve, refusing to let go. Max had saved his life. They had retired within months of each other. The department had assured him Max would be placed with a good family, somewhere warm. Thomas had nodded, told himself it was the right thing. He had been grieving, shaking, unsure he could care for anyone properly. Letting go had seemed like mercy. Now, watching Max's chest rise and fall unevenly, Thomas felt the weight of that decision pressed down, harder than the snow outside. The storm raged through the night. Wind screamed down the chimney. The fire burned low, then was fed again. Thomas barely slept, sitting on the floor beside Max, one hand resting on the dog's shoulder, as if afraid he might vanish. Near dawn, Max's breathing grew shallow. His body stiffened, a faint tremor running through him. Panic flared, hot and unwelcome. No, Thomas said. Leaning close, he wrapped his arms around Max, sharing his own warmth, his forehead pressed against the dog's head. You stayed with me. You hear me? You don't get to leave now. He talked then, filling the cabin with memories. The day Max learned to sit perfectly still, while Thomas balanced a biscuit on his nose. Long patrols, rain-soaked and quiet. Ellen laughing as Max trotted proudly through the kitchen, with Thomas's hat clenched in his teeth. Outside, the storm began to weaken. Inside, Thomas felt something he hadn't allowed himself in years. Hope, fragile and terrifying. Then Max inhaled deeply. His eyes fluttered open. He lifted his head just enough to lick Thomas's hand. A small, deliberate motion that carried more meaning than words. Thomas laughed, the sound rough and unfamiliar. And then he cried, shoulders shaking as years of restraint broke loose. He held Max until the fire burned low, and the sky beyond the window lightened to gray. When the storm finally cleared, the valley emerged transformed. Snow lay pristine and bright, reflecting sunlight in a way that hurt the eyes. A neighbor arrived by snowmobile with supplies, and news that the road would reopen soon. A veterinarian was called, then driven in as far as possible. Max survived. The vet spoke gently of exposure and neglect, of a dog who had clearly been moved from place to place. Once his usefulness faded, Thomas signed the papers without hesitation, his hand steady. That evening, the cabin felt different, warmer somehow. Max lay by the fire, his head resting on Thomas's knee, breathing slow and even. Thomas stroked his fur, watching the flames, listening to the clock. For the first time in years, the silence did not feel empty. Some bonds, he realized, do not end. They wait, and when they return, it is not to remind us of the past, but to give us back the part of ourselves we thought we had lost.